Welcome to the Nikon Z5 Mark II Complete Camera Guide. My name is John Gringo, and I've got a very in-depth class on this particular camera. If this is a camera that you have, that you're going to be using, that you really want to understand how it works and how to get the most out of it, well, that's what we are going to be doing here in this class. Now, this camera is supposedly Nikon's entry level into their full frame, and I think it's fantastic and terrible. It's fantastic for the number of features that it has and the value that it gives you. It's terrible in the sense that somebody who might be just getting into photography, well, you've got your hands full here. There is a lot going on with this camera. Nikon has not held back on a lot of the features in this particular camera. So I think it's going to be a really good camera for a wide variety of genres, whether you're shooting portraits, landscapes, action, or a variety of other things. I think it's going to be an excellent camera for a lot of people. However, there are some quirks to this camera that, interestingly enough, of all the reviews that I've read and seen, which are dozens and dozens, pretty much nobody mentions about this camera. And Nikon has taken some shortcuts in the design and operation of this camera that may affect certain types of photography. And this is something that we need to dive a little bit deeper into later on in the class. And so I'm going to get into that fully as we get into the class. But overall, it's going to be a great camera that's going to be really wonderful for most people. So let me tell you what this very lengthy class is going to be doing in here. I've got a whole series of lessons planned out in here, and it's going to really take you through the complete operation of the camera so that you understand everything about it. And so we're going to start off with just a few introductions here in this first section. We're going to go through a few camera basics for those who might be new to photography, but there's also a few important settings we'll take care of in there. Exposure controls goes through all the controls for handling the exposure, and there's a lot going on there. Focus controls is another obviously very important section, a lot of interesting things in there as well. Capture controls is where things get very interesting, and I'm going to talk more about that later on. We're then going to take a tour of the camera, looking at all the other buttons and dials to see what they do. The viewfinder and monitor has a number of viewing options, so we want to take a peek at those. The I menu is a shortcut to some of the main features, but it can also be customized. Video shooting has a complete different setup to the camera, and so that'll all be addressed in that one section. We'll look at everything that plugs in and hooks up to the camera, and then we'll take a quick peek at some of the lens options and some of the things you need to deal with the lenses on the camera. And then the next several sections will be going through the different tabs in the menu. We'll be going line item through line item, giving you descriptions of everything that's going on and some recommendations on where to set it. And then the final section on the class is going to be my field setup guide, where I recommend how I would set the camera up for different types of shooting that you might be involved in. And it's kind of a good starting point for somebody who's not familiar with exactly where to set everything on the camera for different types of shooting. And when you get done with all of that, that is basically your Z5 Mark II class. Now, one other piece that comes with this class is my PDF. Now, this is a handout PDF. It will be listed along with the videos of this class when you purchase the full class. And so this is part of that full purchase package. And in here is just some highlights from the class. The main thing in here is a complete layout of the menu system. And so if you are complicated by the menu, because it's very long, this lays everything out on here in a nice visual, easy to see style. Now, I've also given my recommendations in here as to what I would recommend a good starting point. Obviously, you're going to want to adjust according to your needs, but at least it gives you a good starting point. Also, I list the menu in here twice, the second time without my recommendations, so that it's just blank and you can see what the settings are and you can write in your own settings that you want to have in there, or your own notes in there. I also include my field setup guide as well as some keynotes on certain sections that are a little bit more complicated, where you might want to have a printout copy of this or a digital copy that is available to you. And so when you purchase the full class, you get the PDF. Just look for this, usually at the top of the list of all the videos that this class includes. And so that's an important part, especially when we get to the menu section later on in this class. Now, as I go through the class, I'm going to be explaining things that can be set in the menu system. Even though we're going to talk about the menu later, some people like to jump ahead and get those things set right away. So I'm going to give you this menu reference box. And if you want to pause the video and go get that particular setting set the way that you want it to, you can do so very easily as we go through the class. Now, later on in the class, I might refer back to an earlier section where I do a more full description of what a particular feature is. I try not to repeat myself. There's a few things that are really important that I will repeat, but most times I'm only going to give the best full definition the first time through. So it is kind of something that you should probably watch in chronological order at the start, but then later pop around as need be. All right, so Z5II, this is the main topic of what this class is about. There's a lot of other things that are important to taking good photographs: lighting, composition, exposure, focusing, any number of different topics. And whenever we start getting onto those topics, I can only go so far before we come back to how do we operate this particular camera. And so that's always what the primary focus is in this class. Now, there is a number of ways that you can operate this camera where it will automatically do things for you or do kind of funky, interesting things on its own that you might like or maybe not. I'm always going to be deferring to how do you operate this camera manually and how do you get the highest quality photos. I will talk about some of the other different options that are available, all of the automated options, but I'm really going to focus on trying to let you understand how to do things yourself, because pretty much everything that can be done on this camera can be done manually. And there are some things that can be done automatically, and it's good to know when to switch back and forth. But I want to make sure that you can get the highest quality images out of this camera possible. I don't know if you know, but I do not know how much you know. We have a lot of different people that watch these classes, and there are some people who are very experienced with Nikon cameras and photography in general, and they're picking up this because, well, frankly, it's a really good camera and small, it's relatively lightweight, and they might know a ton about photography, and they're just looking to pick off the top 1%. And I've included a lot of advanced tidbits about this camera as we go through the course. Now, for people who are newer to photography, I've also included some basic things. We're not going to spend a lot of time dwelling on them. If there's something that you don't understand, write a little note to yourself to go check out more information about that particular feature. But I will be including some basic things along the way. Now, one of the things that this camera does pretty well, and it's kind of new and a little different, is it works with something called the Nikon Imaging Cloud. And this is where it communicates via Wi-Fi through the cloud to other computers or phones. And this can be done for transferring images, transferring shooting settings, or updating your firmware. And this is really kind of a Nikon-based app or program, piece of software, and this is the type of thing that changes over time, and it's not something we're going to really get into. This is not about shooting high-quality images. It's not about really operating with this camera. It's about operating with Nikon's cloud system. And so I know that's a wonderful thing, and some people are going to be using it. That's not what's really involved in this class. I will be going through the communication section in the menu, and I will be showing you how to hook this camera up to a phone so that you can do remote shooting and transferring. So it's not that we're completely avoiding this, we're just not getting into the whole Nikon Imaging Cloud software portion of what's available. Now, the camera comes with a fairly lengthy reference guide, which is where most of the good information is. There is something called a user's manual, which is very short and brief. Then there is also an in-log video guide for people shooting videos that want to know more about that particular shooting format. And all of this is nice. It's not the easiest to digest. That's kind of my job, is to go through all of that and turn it into normal human speak and understanding. And that's what we're going to be doing in this class, is a general user's guide in here. Now, most people, I'm thinking, are probably not going to need to go to the manual beyond what I have involved in this class, but many of you are, because there are detailed specifications, there's compatibility, there's other technical information that is in that guide that is not going to be in this class. And so don't throw it out. There is still a reason to keep it around. You might need to pop into that if you're really looking for more information on something in particular that maybe isn't included in this class. But I'm going to try to cover 99% of the stuff for 99% of the photographers out there. All right, now there might be some people who are new to Nikon. Nikon has one of the most legendary histories in photography. They started with binoculars and lenses, and then they started making rangefinder cameras. And I know it's strange to list an article in the New York Times as one of the most key moments in Nikon's history, but this was some really good buzz with Nikon. This really brought them to the forefront of photography and let people know that, hey, this Japanese manufacturer makes really good cameras. And this helped out when they introduced their SLR system, the F-mount system, which was hugely popular for decades and decades. In '86, they got into autofocus work. They played around with some other formats, the APS system. And then in '99, they went digital with a cropped frame sensor, and then they went to a full frame sensor in 2007. They experimented with the mirrorless system in 2011, and then where this system is in the Z lens mount, they went full frame in 2018, and then a year later brought in a cropped frame version of that particular camera. And so they have been producing cameras and lenses for many years, and they are known throughout the industry as being one of the best manufacturers out there. Now, the current system of Nikon cameras and lenses is mostly focused on full-frame mirrorless cameras, which is right where this camera is. It's at the entry-level, lowest price model in the currently available models in there, and they've got some great options in there that fit a wide variety of needs. They also make a number of cropped frame versions of this camera that can utilize the same lenses. Now, they are still making available DSLRs. I don't know that they're actually manufacturing them anymore, although they may be. They're going to be around for a little while, but they have really shifted their focus more into the mirrorless world. We haven't seen any new DSLR cameras or lenses in, well, several years at this particular point in time. So the Z cameras, the Z mount system, use Z lenses. And so if you are using a full frame camera like the Z5II, then you're going to be using the Z lenses. They also make ZDX lenses, and DX is Nikon phrasing for crop frame or smaller image circle. And so that is designed for the smaller censored cameras like the Z50 and so forth. And so if you put those on this camera, you're not going to be getting full frame of coverage. You're not going to be getting all the megapixels on there. And so you want to be a little bit careful about what lenses you put on this camera. And I'll talk more about that in the lens section. Now, as you go through the user's guide on this camera, there is, of course, lots of warnings on this camera. It is a very sophisticated piece of technology. You don't want to drop it. You don't want to put it underwater or anything like that. But it is designed to be taken about and to be handled in a normal way. And so it is a pretty durable camera. It's got a partially constructed magnesium alloy body. It's going to be very strong. It can handle big lenses on it. It just doesn't handle drops real well. There is a fair bit of weather sealing on this. I think an admirable amount for such an entry-level camera. So it's nice to see that. It is not as good a weather sealing as some of the medium or higher end cameras, but it is still pretty good to start with. One of the ways that they rate how durable a camera is how many shutter cycles the shutter can handle. And this one can handle 200,000. And back in the day, 50,000 was the standard, but they've made improvements on durability. There are some cameras that are double this number, but they are much higher end cameras. And so this is still considered very good, but appropriate for its price range, you might say. All right, if you're going to be taking this class, you're going to be playing around with the camera a lot. You need to make sure things are ready. You're going to want to have a charged battery. That usually takes about 2.5 hours. You'll need a lens on there for all the functions to work properly. You'll need a memory card in the camera. You don't need to have two. You can put one in there. We'll talk more about card options a little bit later on. Go ahead and turn your camera on. And some of you will have lenses that have an A and M switch on the side. That is for automatic focus and manual focus. Some of you will not have that on the side of your lenses, and that's perfectly fine. Some lenses are small and they don't put that switch on there, and there's going to be a setting in the camera that you can do that. But if you don't see it on your lens, you don't need to worry about it right now. But if you do see it, make sure it's in the A position. And not my favorite mode on this camera, but the full auto mode is going to take care of everything for you. And that's what we're going to do just to test our cameras out and then go ahead and take a photo. So I'm going to turn my camera on. I'm going to rotate it to the auto mode and then make sure my camera's got the A setting on the lens. and just take a photo. I just want to make sure that things are working properly. Now, if your camera is not working properly, now is a good time to go address that. Charge that battery, get a memory card in there, get the right lens on there, fix whatever problem you need to, because you want to be ready for the rest of this class. Now, before we start diving into really important sections, one thing I want to talk about real quickly is the firmware on the camera. So the firmware is the software that runs all the operations in the menu system on the camera. And from time to time, Nikon updates their cameras either for improvements or bug fixes or feature enhancements. And we've seen one very minor update so far. Usually the cameras start at 1.00. We're now up to 1.01 as of the recording of this class. Now it may change after I record this class, and I will try to do an update if necessary, if possible. I don't do updates on really minor things. I kind of wait for more major changes to happen to the camera. But if you do purchase this class and you want to get the update and see what's new and what's changed in the camera, you can come back and log back in, and we sometimes make updates, but only when they're pretty significant updates. And so be aware and check back if necessary. Now, if you do want to get new firmware, if new firmware is available, you need to go to Nikon's website, look for just Nikon firmware. That usually gets to their support page, download the appropriate software, put it on a memory card, you put it in the camera and go to that firmware, and it will ask you to update that firmware. Let me show you just real quickly on how to check that firmware. We'll go ahead and dive into the menu system right down here. And what we want to do is come down to the wrench icon, and we want to go to the bottom of this very long scrolling list, because I think it's right at the bottom of this. There's our firmware version, and you can see that the C stands for camera. We are at 1.01, and LF stands for lens firmware updates. That's right, they do firmware updates on lenses as well, and that lens happens to be at 1.01, but if you have a different lens, you could have a very different number there as well. And so that's how we check it. If I had new firmware on the memory card, this would have another option available for updating the firmware. And so if you need to do that, now's a good time to take care of that. All right, one other thing that I want to address, and that is a lot of people like to play around with their camera. I know I do, and I like to change all sorts of settings. And I want my camera to appear and act like it's fresh out of the box, because I know some of you are going to have cameras that are fairly new that you haven't played around with a lot. And because I've been getting ready for this class and I've been changing everything in here, I want to make sure everything looks and acts normal on this camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset back to the factory default settings. So I'm going to dive into the menu and go to reset all settings. So let's go ahead and get this done. So we were just down at firmware version. We're going to go up one to reset all settings. We're going to go to the right in here. And before we do this, just want to let you know that you don't have to do this. This is optional. I'm doing it because I want to get my camera back to the factory default settings. And so I'm going to have reset, and I'm going to press the OK button. And then it's going to ask me if I really want to do this. And I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to press OK. And everything is reset. I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to turn the camera back on. And now everything is factory fresh in there. And so you'll be able to know exactly what's going on with my camera, because I haven't had anything funky set up at this time. All right, so that is your introduction to the Z5II. We've got lots to get to in the remainder of this class. We'll see you there.